and welcome back, my dear students, once more to your YouTube channel. In today's video, I shall be discussing a poem from your ISC syllabus, and this one is called Small Towns and the River, and this one is from the book Rhapsody, a collection of ISC poems. Alright, now without further ado, let's get started. But before I begin, let me remind you, if you have been finding my videos interesting and helpful, kindly do not forget to give me a like and also to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It shall keep me motivated. Alright, without further ado, let's get started now. The poem Small Towns and the River is on page 60. About the poet Mamang Dai. Mamang Dai was born in 1957 at Pasighat, East Siang district. This is significant because the poem is closely related to where she was born and where she grew up. Alright, so she was born in Arunachal Pradesh. Okay, a typical small hamlet of Arunachal Pradesh surrounded by hills on all sides. This is very significant. Come down to page 61's last paragraph. Small Towns and the River from Dai's collection River Poems is a poem about life and mortality. The eternal flow of the river being contrasted with the limited span of human life. Okay, and strangely enough, every time I read this poem, I'm reminded of Tennyson's Brook. Those of you who've read the Brook in your junior classes, I'm sure you will agree to me on this. Okay, so now let's come back to the poem Small Towns and the River by Mamang Dai. Small towns always remind me of death. My hometown lies calmly amidst the trees. It is always the same. In summer or winter, with the dust flying or the wind howling down the gorge. So, small towns always remind the poet of death. Why? Because when the poet was writing this poem, the immediate cause of this poem was that she had lost one of her aunts. Okay, and it was, her mother's younger sister whom she had lost. And I told you right at the beginning that she was born and brought up in a small hamlet of Arunachal. What usually happens in these small hamlets, children, there are a few number of families living together. Okay, as a result of which, whenever any good news, any good things would happen, it would spread fast. When any calamity would strike the hamlet, it would spread fast. And this is death. Okay, so a death in the neighborhood would affect all the houses in the region. So she says, small towns always remind me of death. How death in one house affected all the houses in the area. And then she goes on to describe her hometown. My hometown lies calmly amidst the trees. It is always the same. So the hometown was closely connected to nature. So she is trying to portray a picture of rural tranquility. It is always the same. In summer or winter, with the dust flying or the wind howling down the gorge. Whether it was summer or whether it was winter, time could not affect the region. It remained the same. So talking about permanence against the passage of time. Change of seasons is, indicative of the passage of time. However, passage of time could not affect the tranquility of the village. The permanence of the village is pitted against the impermanence of human life. In summer or winter, with the dust flying or the wind howling down the gorge. In summer, the wind will blow and the dust would fly off. And in winter, what happened? A wind would howl down the gorge. Gorge is a narrow valley between two hills. Okay, the wind would move so fast that it would create a shrieking sound, echoes. Okay, so the wind howling down the gorge. We have two figures of speech here. In the dust flying is synecdoche, and the wind howling is onomatopoeia, sound words. Also, you see the dust flying and the wind howling. These are symbolic. Symbols of what? You see, this small hamlet in Arunachal is relatively lying on the border state. Arunachal itself is a border state. Okay. And there are constant political tensions battering the peace of the region. So the dust flying and the wind howling could be the symbols of the political tensions which batter the peace of these towns, which are small towns which are located on the borders. All right. Just the other day, someone died. In the dreadful silence, we wept, looking at the sad wreath of tuberoses. Life and death, only the rituals are permanent. So, just the other day, someone died, and there was absolute silence all along. In the dreadful silence, we wept. There was crying everywhere. Everyone was crying. Everyone was the shared humanity. The sorrow was shared. Looking at the sad wreath of tuberoses. Tuberoses are flowers. But you see, the poet says the sad wreath of tuberoses, as if the tuberoses were sad. But the idea is not that. What she's saying is the tuberoses were kept on the dead body and they were feeling sad seeing the dead body. So the feeling of the people is being transferred to that on the tuberoses. So this is a transferred epithet. And then she goes on to say, life and death, only the rituals are permanent. Emphasis on the inevitability of death. Okay, life and death. Life is followed by death, death is followed by life. There is this cycle. So, emphasis on the inevitability of death. However, what remains after death? Only the rituals are permanent. The past generation dies, and the present generation offer their last services through several rituals, through certain rituals. So the rituals are permanent. So the rituals become a cultural signifier. It emanates a cultural value. The river has a soul, personification. In the summer, it cuts through the land like a torrent of grief. Sometimes, I think it holds its breath, seeking a land of fish and stars. The river has a soul. It is eternal. It is timeless. It is immortal. It goes on flowing, unlike human life. That is why I was telling you that every time I read this poem, I'm reminded of Tennyson's Brook. The river has a soul. Why? How does it function as a human being, as a conscious individual? In the summer, it cuts through the land. It comes down through the high mountains. It comes down from the high mountains and comes down to the plain land. Okay. And while it is moving down, what does it do? Since it's moving down the slope, its speed is very high. Therefore, it causes weathering and erosion while it comes down. And how has the poet described this movement of the river? Like a torrent of grief, like a surge of grief. Simile. Okay? Sometimes I think it holds its breath. Sometimes the poet feels even the river pauses, seeking a land of fish and stars. Sometimes the river slows down in the hope of meeting the land and the sky. Just like the human beings wait for the tensions in the border areas to cease. Similarly, the river also stops at times, or rather pauses, to and awaits for the union with the horizon, the land of fish and stars, like the individuals of the hamlet who desperately hope that someday these political tensions will get over and they will finally be able to live in peace and solitude. So, talking about the dynamic nature of the river and equating it with the political condition of the human beings of Arunachal. The river has a soul. It knows, stretching past the town, from the first drop of rain to dry earth and mist on the mountain tops, the river knows the immortality of water. The river has a soul. It is a conscious individual. It has knowledge about everything. What are the things it has knowledge about? It has knowledge about the first drop of rain to dry earth, when the water vaporizes and then goes on to get condensed, form clouds, and then brings down rainfall. The river has knowledge of the entire water cycle. And mist on the mountain tops, when the river water goes up by condensation and forms cloud, it comes down as mists on the mountain tops. The river knows the immortality of water, and from mist it changes its form, but it changes into rain, it changes into water. There is this constant change in form, but the river is permanent. And the river, because it is a conscious individual, because it has a soul, it has this higher knowledge. What is this higher knowledge? That human life is impermanent as against the river, which is eternal, which is timeless. We have several figures of speech here. Mist on the mountain tops is your alliteration. And I told you river has a soul is personification. Alright? Now, then the poet talks about something very unique. A shrine of happy pictures marks the days of childhood. She recalls her childhood when everything seemed to be a bed of red roses. Everything was very happy. Marks the days of childhood. In her childhood, there was not so much of political tension. Okay, things were comparatively smoother. Small towns grow with anxiety with future. However, now these small towns are anxious. Why are they anxious? Number one, because of the political tensions. Number two, with this avalanche of technology, with this huge exponential rise in technology and its associated hazards. The poet had begun the poem by talking about how tranquil the place is, how closely connected it is with nature. But now she is bringing this fact out that with this avalanche of technology, whether they will be able to retain this tranquility of nature, that they do not know. And with this increasing political tension each day, whether things will be fine in the future, they are very anxious about it. The dead are placed pointing west. When the soul rises, it will walk into the golden east, into the house of the sun. So here you see, previously the poet has talked about how these rituals form a cultural signifier and how these rituals are permanent. Again, talking about the rituals after death. The dead are placed pointing west. Okay, so when a person dies, the feet of the dead person is usually pointed towards the west. Why? Because the west is the setting sun. It signifies death and decay. And when the person will rise, therefore, it will walk into the golden east. It will face the east, because the sun rises from the east. So, renewal, rebirth into the house of the sun. Again, this is a ritual of that place. So, cultural signifier. In the cool bamboo restored in the sunlight, life matters like this. Bamboo, why is this bamboo is usually grown in the, in small places, and bamboo here, it is said, just as sunlight brings in rejuvenation of life to the bamboo trees, when they bamboo trees need a lot of sunlight to grow, but you see, when there is lack of sunlight, these bamboo trees does not get enough green, they do not get enough life to grow, so they lack that vigor to grow. So what happens, just the moment sunlight falls on them, they get rejuvenated. Similarly, life also gets rejuvenated with the advent of spirituality here. So just as sunlight brings in rejuvenation of life to the bamboo trees, which have become cold in the absence of the sun, in the similar way, spirituality revives life in these small hamlets. In small towns by the river, we all want to walk with the gods. In the small towns, the general desire of the people is to get a spiritual elevation, to connect themselves with the gods, with the divine. Alright, so this is the poem. Now, what are the themes of the poem? The first and foremost theme of the poem is transience of life, fleeting nature of human existence, and the cycle of life and death. We see death becomes a recurrent theme in the poem. But why? Because it is pitted against human life. That human life is impermanent, whereas nature is permanent. The second theme is the interconnection between the human world and the world of nature. The third theme is longing for spiritual elevation. People long to walk with the gods, be with the gods, the spiritual transcendence. And finally, the essence of rituals. Rituals as permanent cultural signifiers. Alright, so these are the themes of the poem. Now, coming to the title, Small Towns and the River, you see, the poem is reflective in its essence, but like the river flows through this region in Arunachal, the narration of the personal experiences and the philosophical insights of the poet is noteworthy in the poem, and hence the title is justified. Alright, so this is the poem, my dear students. I hope I have been lucid enough with my explanation. If you like this video, kindly do not forget to give me a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You could perhaps share it with your friends before the exam so that they might be benefited as well. See you in the next video very soon. Till then, take very good care of your health and goodbye.